Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Rapsodo webinar. The future is now. Technology and softball are intertwining at a breakneck pace, and we are going to learn all about how these two coaches use technology within their programs, offensively and defensively, pitching, strategy, you name it. I'd like to introduce Kristen from Rapsodo along with JT and Josh to get this started. And we hope you enjoy this episode of NFCA webinar in partnership with Rapsodo.
Absolutely. Thank you, NFCA, for having us here. Like they mentioned, today we're just going to talk about data and how Rapsodo has been moving the game of softball forward for the last 5 years. We have Josh Johnson of Virginia Tech that works on our pitching side, and JT Gasso from Oklahoma that works on our hitting side. So they'll be talking about our two products, our pitching 2.0 and our hitting 2.0 product. They are separate, but they are the gurus of both of those products. So we're excited to have them here and get talking with them. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Josh. And Josh, can you just introduce yourself? And what's great about you and JT is you guys have been around the softball coaching world for a very long time. Like we've progressed the coaching style with that. So can you just talk briefly about your history as a coach, kind of how you started, got into softball, and then how you started to integrate data through that transition?
Yeah. Like Kristen said, my name is Josh Johnson. I'm the pitching coach at Virginia Tech, and also one of the data analysts. We have two. Megan White is our other analyst, and she's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, my background goes back to I started to get into softball because my stepdad, who's my dad, was a softball pitcher. And as I was growing up, I started to play a lot of men's fast pitch at the age of 17, kind of to supplement the lack of baseball games that I was getting. And then lo and behold, it turned out to be something I loved a lot more. So I started to play at a pretty high level, started coaching because I met a guy through the grapevine of the playing side, and he asked if I wanted to come and start helping him do lessons. This is back in 2004. So I started doing lessons with him. He kind of teaches me a process on how to teach the sport rather than just to tell everybody how I played. And then that kind of festered into a college coaching career, starting at the junior college level in 2010, working over to now 5 or 6 different stops at the Division I level. So now it's kind of now I'm kind of a veteran somehow through this process. And I believe, and then Kristen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I predate Rapsodo. I think I predate you at Rapsodo.
You do.
And I'm pretty sure I had one of the first 1 or 2 units for softball. So I've also been able to grow up with Rapsodo and through a baseball connection, actually. I've known the president of Rapsodo for quite a while. So, we've gone through a lot of updates together, and so hopefully I can help kind of clear up some things with the process and tell you how I get to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. JT, same question for you. How have you kind of obviously grown through the coaching ranks and then also seen Rapsodo kind of grow with you during that process?
Yeah, so for us, when I came in, I was a GA at OU in 12 and 13, and I've been around softball. Obviously, family's been locked in for literally since I was born into it. So the one huge thing for me is just kind of following along, throughout my life, is I really saw video take off like digitally, I think between like 2008 and 10. And it was really interesting to me, just the video aspect, because we still have all of the old VHS tapes, and they're in the archives, but we still got them. So it's video. I really saw it take off then, and then you start to see a bunch of different technologies kind of cut video, and it was awesome. So I think back then, it was really only RVP and Dartfish and a couple other companies, but then I go and I'm playing, and that's when you start to see TrackMan data start to take off, and that was on the baseball side. And so it really, small junior college in Oklahoma, you start to learn about spin rate and exit velocity and all these different things. So that was around the same time, like 08, 10, and kind of moving forward. So when I saw that Rapsodo was getting into softball, it was kind of like a light bulb, like, yes, because there wasn't, I think back then, the only thing that was getting data was like ZEP, if you guys remember the old ZEP sensors. But now, when the only thing that we had to measure anything performative, like just measuring the ball, was a pocket radar or a stalker radar or the jugs or whatever else was getting pitch velocity. So now something that goes even deeper into that was something that we jumped into like right away. So for me, what it's helped is just know, like, hey, everyone on this call, if you're into hitting, you want to hit the ball hard. So for me, it was what is a hard hit ball? And so now it takes what's helped us is it's taken the subjective, like, oh yeah, that ball was hit hard, and now it's put a number to it, like you're actually hitting the ball this hard when you could be doing, that was a very basic general term, and general way that's kind of helped us is just showing from a hitting side, like, what are you doing, and then the coaching takes over with how are you doing it and how can you do it a little bit better.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to kind of dig in a little bit more to both of those things with you and Josh. And I know they've mentioned it as well. We do have 15 minutes slated at the end of this for any questions. So please make sure to drop those in the chat while Josh and JT are talking about anything specific, and we'll make sure to dig into those a little bit more. But Josh, back to you now. Can you give some examples of how you're using the pitching data and those numbers specifically during that development stage and that pitch design stage with your pitchers?
Right. So right now, obviously during the fall is our big skill development and player development time of the year. Once we get to season, we typically use our technologies to really help maintain. But right now is here when we want the growth. And so there's a couple of different things that I use the Rapsodo for. A lot of it, and I feel like just to start with, the most important thing is data collection. Right. When we talk statistics, we want to have at least 30 of each pitch to know, okay, this is what's going on. And so I think, number one, my best advice to start with in this whole thing, because if you don't do this, then none of the rest of this matters, but is getting a lot of data and getting a lot of data points so that you can start to calibrate, okay, this is exactly what's going on. And then work from there. But what we do, we're going to have a few different types of days that help us with player development. So we have our velo days, and on those days, I'm really using the Rapsodo as a data collection unit. And I'll actually, I will actually use the radar gun piece of it to help with the intent of our pitchers to make sure that they're maintaining a high velocity intent. And then we do pitch design days, which I think is probably the most valuable portion of using the Rapsodo. We also use the Insight camera that connects to the Rapsodo that I think is absolutely invaluable. 100%. If you're not using slow motion video, you're at a deficit right away. But utilizing that, my pitchers typically on a day like that when we're doing pitch design is we use the camera as a way to give us concurrent and accurate feedback on what's happening. So this allows us to really see, it's not just about the number that comes off of that, but also how is that being created? Like, how are our fingers manipulating the ball to make the ball spin in the direction we're looking for? And then of course, like, having data on a day-to-day basis allows us to track this. So, with my players right now, we're making strides in a direction, and the Rapsodo unit is helping us to track, okay, how much more break are we getting? And then when we do our medium intent days where we focus more on command and spin, now the next day, okay, my rise was at +2 yesterday. Okay, we're up from 0 to +2, but now are we maintaining a +2 vertical break over the course of our bullpen the next day? So those are the important things. Is not just helping us to figure out and what I do, assess the pitcher, but then also track development and be able to work on the front end of saying, okay, during pitch development, am I getting better? Am I doing the things that are required to get better, and work forward? So that's a lot of word salad right there, but essentially it's we use it in 3 different forms as far as skill development goes: assessment, pitch design, and then data, and then development tracking over a period of time.
Yeah, it's great. JT, I know Josh kind of mentioned that as well, as far as the fall and kind of doing that assessment and baseline is kind of always the starting point with using Rapsodo and any data technology. Can you explain, I know you guys do something similar for the hitting side, how you guys kind of develop that baseline and run that assessment test when the hitters come in the first day in the fall for you guys?
Yeah, so we go a week, and it is just 20 to 30 minutes, and they're just getting swings off of our different machines. So in the past I did get front toss. I would get some front toss exit velocities, but I kind of went away from that over the past couple of years, just because for me, I think the thing that matters the most is how they perform off of a live arm. And if we got to be very careful with, we have managers and we have people that can throw a live arm, but nothing's going to simulate a pitcher like a pitcher, an actual pitcher. But if you know that you're going to have some speeds, and we can simulate the literal speed that they're going to see, I feel like that's our best way to see performance against those different speeds. So we'll test over a very large range of speeds off of our machines over the course of a week, and we just let them swing off these different speeds. So now after a week, I can kind of see like where they're at in their performance against different velocities, pitching velocities. So 55, 60, 65, and we go all the way up to 75 plus. And we may not get a ton of batted balls. And that says a lot too of hey, we need to make our moves in a tighter window, or we gotta be better at timing, or whatever the case is. But I feel like for me, it's not fair to the players for me to just come in and say, you got to do this, this, and this. I got to see what they can do and how they perform against things that they're going to see in a game. So we'll do that like the first week, and then we'll kind of we're getting close to midpoint where we kind of do like a smaller version of it where we're going to check in, and then we'll do an end at the very end of the fall, in that like right before Thanksgiving window, December, right before finals, where we're just kind of seeing again how they are over time. So now we take all that information, and now we get to see like this is where you started, and this is kind of where you're at. So for some people, it may just be, hey, we need more balls in play. You were swinging and missing, had a lot of foul balls, and now look like where you're at with this. So yeah, that baseline for us is important just to kind of see where they're at, and where we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned obviously the big part of that is off of live arm. And I know that both you and Josh throw this out during a lot of live on live scrimmaging. Can you just talk about kind of that next step of using this and having that device out there during those live on live sessions, and really what you're collecting, how valuable that is?
Yeah, so now you can, for us, compare it to if you have a pitcher that's throwing, let's just say 65, and we know that off machines, like, hey, 65, like you're hitting the ball 70, or you maxed out at 70, your average is like 68 or something. So now if they're not hitting some of those numbers and they're not hitting the ball as hard, we can go back through and say, okay, why are you not doing that? Is it the spin? Do we need to train like a higher like a higher spin rate? Is it the location? Is it like, what is it that's not causing you to have the same thing that you were doing just, a week ago or at the beginning? So for us, yeah, we use it to compare, why is it that you're doing a better or you're not doing as good, or whatever the case is. So you know it's kind of complicated because there is the machines that can help you go from 65, 70. You can train the different speeds, but now there's also other factors to a pitcher that you got to train with, different movements, different spins, locations, and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know that. I hope that answered your question. But yes, take the live arm, using it to compare what we're training, or what our baseline is against the different machines.
Yeah, Josh, kind of same thing to you. As I know, like I said, you guys both use this a lot in that live on live scrimmage setting as well. How do you guys kind of use that pitching Rapsodo out there facing live hitters, and what's kind of your plan getting that data and feedback to them?
Right. So I think the big thing for us, we're trying to stay ahead of JT's hitters, and that's the race. It's like who can get there faster. And I've gotten the pleasure, I guess we'll call it pleasure, of facing them the last 3 years, and it's the challenge part of it, right? Which is what makes it fun. But the idea is that you maintain your spin and your speed and everything in the course of the game. So just trying to figure this out, see if I can show y'all. But I actually prefer the downloadable service that the Rapsodo has, because this allows me to watch those kind of things over the course of time. So if I go ahead and share this, so I actually track on the left side, you'll see that these are all in-game, or these are all practice metrics, and then the other side is all game metrics. So as we're pitching, we're actually throwing it out there so that we make sure that, okay, are you maintaining your same pitch metrics while we're throwing in a game. This allows us all kinds of different things, and we obviously, and I'll say, we track a lot more than this, but when it comes to Rapsodo, we try to get it out there. And the nice thing about the fall is we're actually, most of the time I'm able to convince whoever we're playing to let me put it out there in the middle of a scrimmage, which helps. But I think, if you're looking at your day-to-day, and I'm trying to find this now, where the heck did they go? Oh, here we go. If you're looking at your day-to-day, okay, I can take session by session and find out, okay, how did that go? I used Brendan, this is our manager. He's trying to become a pitcher as we go, but I used his account to work with the other team and allow them to see some of their data. But as you're going through, you can actually look and say, okay, is what we're developing holding up during a game, or am I overthrowing everything and not getting the spin that I've been training for? This really helps us determine whether or not what we're doing in training is actually working toward the game. The other thing that I love is I can actually see in real time the data that we're getting, because I'm the one running the iPad during the Rapsodo or during the scrimmage. So this allows me to say, okay, at that moment, look, your drop ball is only moving 2 inches now instead of the 8 inches that you've been training for. You're doing something different. Let's try to work through this in the moment, so that the next set you go out there and throw, that we can actually make that adjustment in real time. So that to me is super important. And there's nothing that really teaches like the game. There's nothing that really can tell you, okay, this is going to be effective like a game will, or like a live scrimmage will. And, luckily we're facing, some of the best hitters in the country every single day in practice. So a lot of times that's going to be our best litmus test as to how our pitchers are actually getting developed.
Yeah, that's great. JT, can I go back to you here? You touched on it again briefly at the beginning when you said it takes out the subjectivity of the training part. Can you really go into that a little bit more about how data And Josh is kind of saying this too in his part of like seeing those numbers and seeing results, how quickly that helps these athletes learn and maybe buy in or maybe make those adjustments faster.
Yeah, so I think we've all been I think a lot of people on this call have been to those really late night parks where the lights are bright, or we're in high elevation areas where a ball's getting hit and you're like, oh, that's not hit very hard, and it just goes out. Or maybe we're just saying like, man, the ball's hit so hard, and it's, sometimes I really feel like our eyes can really trick us. So I remember we've had athletes that have come in, after the fall or after the season, and they would ask like, hey, how do you think you did? And oh, I thought I did great. And I'm looking at all the data right here saying, hey, maybe you weren't as great as kind of what you might have thought. So whenever we added Rapsodo metrics and we were showing them like, hey, now it's no longer like, hey, how do you think you did? It's, hey, here's what you've done. And we're going to create this, we're going to take this plan and we're going to create like here's how we can get better. So now we are actively like individualizing each development plan for each player, because I really feel like for someone to look and say like, hey, that was a hard hit, that works to a certain degree when you're just looking and saying like, hey, like one batted ball in one game, like, yeah, that ball was hit hard. But now when you're looking at, let's just say, a hitting session and they get 100 swings in, and yes, hard hit. Now it sounds like, man, I said hard hit a lot. Man, maybe I didn't, or I don't know. Maybe I wasn't looking at the right thing, or looking at something different. So, it's helped us as coaches also be accountable to us and saying like, here's some of the changes or fixes that we see, let's do it. And now you put the Rapsodo out, and I'm hitting, and now I can say like, oh, you know what? It's actually not working like I thought I would. Scrap it, forget everything I just said. Let's do something a little bit different, or let's go in this direction. And for us, we don't want to guess at all. If we can take guesswork out of it, it's going to help not just us, but I think it's going to help the players better understand them as individuals and what they're really, really good at and how they can get better.
Yeah, Josh, maybe can you kind of touch on that too, when you were talking to those players in between innings too? Maybe the confidence changes a little bit too, knowing numbers and hitting things, and maybe going into it knowing, at this spin rate or this break, my ball really is, successful in live games. So can you talk a little bit more? Our data helps build that confidence in players a little bit quicker when you weren't using data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the main thing, and what JT touched on, is the individual part of what makes a player a good, and how you develop a player development system. I think that one of the things that each player, if they've got, if they're a drop ball pitcher and they're working on a rise ball, to understand like, if you have 10 inches of separation, that's pretty good, right? And to show them that, I think the big thing, like you said, it's objective. You're showing them that this is the case. And I think early on, I'd hear complaints to say, oh, this isn't working. Well, no, the problem is the pitch isn't working, and you're not realizing that the every single thing that you're throwing is gyro, and that's a tough pill to swallow, I think, sometimes. Knowing that now, and having our players bought into the idea that technology can help them objectively find what's working best for them. Now we can sit there and say, okay, when you overthrow this pitch, it doesn't work as well. So now let's gear this towards you and make this spin. Now, mind you, velocity still works pretty good. If you can throw over 70, you're going to do all right. So like, not taking away from what the velocity can do, but not every single pitcher that throws hard is best at that speed. And I think that when we start talking about creating movement and creating angles and creating swing and miss, those are all going to be individual specific. And it might be because you play off your changeup. It might be because you play off your best pitch. It might be because your secondary pitch is set up your best pitch well. Those are the kind of things that we can help develop using the technology of data. To me, data got a bad name for it because everybody's wanting to talk about batting average and ERA and say, oh, these are numbers, these are data. That's not really the case. The case is, on an individual basis, in pitch to pitch, how is our skill holding up? I think that's the more important thing. And I'd also say that we want consistent performance. If we sit there and say, okay, that rise ball went up 5 inches, but I'm sitting at 2 inches. Well, if we sit in there and we can only produce that one time, that's probably not going to be good enough over the course of a 100 pitch game, right? 1 out of 100, not going to be good enough. So also showing the player like, hey, just because you hit it on that one pitch does not mean that we have it, right? It's a great way to show where we have actual development versus I did this once, and we get it in recruiting all the time. I'm sure JT does too. That one ball that came off the bat at 78 miles an hour, and you're like, I'm a 78-mile-an-hour exit. And then we get the email that says, this is what I got. And you're like, okay, well, I'm looking at the screenshot and I see that most of them are like 68. Well, that's not 78. And just like, oh, I got one ball to rise 8 inches. Okay, that's borderline as good as it gets in this country. But the rest of them didn't. So, maybe that one pitch just isn't going to help you in that moment. So I think showing them they're showing them through data and objective data that they're consistently doing this over time is a huge piece to what we're doing. Kristen, you're muted.
Thank you. I just said, Josh, I know you were speaking a lot there about vertical break, spin rate, a couple of key metrics. JT, I know that we speak a lot about exit velocity, launch angle, and that third one is spin that you and I talk about a lot that I don't think we do a lot in hitting. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about how you combine those three, as Josh talked about, an individual plan where you're looking at that exit velocity, that launch angle, that spin per player, and where you see kind of those ranges go based off of certain numbers?
Yeah. So, right off the bat, that's the one you said, a big buzzword, I feel like, is launch angle with launch angle swing. And so my favorite thing is when someone is telling you like, hey, hit line drives, you're literally telling them to hit a ball at a certain launch angle. So I feel like, kind of like Josh is saying, a lot of names have gotten a bad rap. And for us, if you just know, if you look at all the StatCast data MLB has, and they're classifying, and you're looking at what different batted balls mean. So for us, 10 to 25, 10 degrees, 25 degrees, in between there is a line drive. Anything above 25, fly ball, and then anything below 10 is a ground ball. And so, what you're seeing is the lower the launch angle, the higher the exit speed for the most part, generally. And the higher the exit speed, the more the way we tell our players, the more likely you're going to get on first base. So for us, hitting a hard line drive turns into doubles, home runs, and you see you can get a lot of singles like that. But for us, understanding, like, knowing you can still prioritize some of the old language that we want, which is like, hey, hit a hard line drive. That has been the same forever. That's not going to change. Now, if you're saying, hey, hit a hard line drive, and you're facing a drop ball pitcher, you're probably going to hit it into the ground, and they probably want you to hit into the ground. And now you're talking about double play. So it's just kind of understanding the relationship of the pitch that you're getting, and then what you're trying to hit, like how you're trying to hit the ball, how you're trying to influence your bat to hit the ball the way that you want. The spin is very interesting from a hitting perspective, because you would just think like, hey, I want a high spin, but if you hit a high spin and it sacrifices, if you hit the ball with high spin and you sacrifice some exit velocity off of that, the ball's just going to balloon right up in the air, or you might hit it straight down in the ground. So for us, we don't like a ton of spin. We don't want to, I'm not saying we want to hit knuckleballs, but for us, if we prioritize hitting the ball hard and hitting it on a line, you're going to see a lot more of those low spin, hard hit balls rather than high fly balls with high spin, or maybe the opposite, like they try and swing down and you cut the ball and it just, like I said, balloons up in the air into the infield. So spin, we don't really look at the metric, and like we can look at it over time and be like, hey, all these hard hit balls have this sort of spin, but what we're seeing is we don't see like over 2,000 on our hardest hit balls. We're seeing like for the 900 to like 1,500 range of like the hardest hit balls, furthest balls that we hit are kind of in there, but we're not, like I kind of said earlier, we're not saying launch and go hit it at 25. I mean, that's ridiculous to think that a kid can get in there, but all right, this one's going to be 26. This one's going to be 30. Like that's not, we want to prioritize the thinking and get it out of the way. So just hit a hard line drive. That's it. Don't put any specifics on it. Let's just make it as general as possible. So now we take the thinking out of it. Hard hit line drives up the middle. Maybe depending on what we're facing, we may need to prioritize pull side or go away or hit a fly ball or ground ball, whatever the case is. But for the most part, hard hit line drives correlate to all the other metrics that we're wanting to that are leading to success.
Yeah, that's great. And we've always kind of talked about it, you and I, in these conversations, that the launch angle, the spin, the exit velocity, they all kind of pull from each other. So like what you're saying, if you're kind of increase launch angle or spin, you're going to pull from that exit velocity. So it's really important to have those three and kind of figure out exactly what they are. So very important. I think spin is something that I know you and I have gone back and forth about a lot, that maybe hasn't been talked about too much in softball. On the hitting side, that we've found is pretty influential. When you get up to those 3,000 RPMs, that ball just kind of hangs and that turns that hit into, a fly ball out a lot of times. Josh, can you talk about same thing, spin rate, spin direction, and kind of those things that you're looking at a lot on the pitching side, number specifically?
Yeah, and I think to start with is effectiveness can happen in a lot of different ways as a pitcher. The idea, and this is, in my world, effectiveness is limiting the amount of balls you give up at a 10 to 20 degree launch angle with a 70-mile-an-hour exit velo or more. That's the idea. If I can get a batter to hit the ball, with a negative launch angle, that's going to keep the ball in the park. And now all of a sudden we don't give up home runs. It becomes a lot harder to hit or a lot harder to score. Even if we're giving up hard contact as it's straight into the ground, then so what? The idea is that, and in my terms, I like to limit hard contact. I like to get as many swings and misses as possible. And I want to develop a pitch that I can throw in the strike zone that moves enough where I can get soft contact. Those to me are the most important things. So when we start to do that, I think a lot of people get overworked up about spin direction, thinking that spin direction is the king or the queen of everything. And it really isn't, because the more spin that you get, typically, the less velocity you get for the same exact reasons in the hitting part. And so obviously if you can spin it more and throw it hard, you're going to be amongst the elite. And so, but oftentimes that spin direction suffers because of that. So if we're trying to develop a pitch, in my opinion, the spin direction would be the most important part. But if you're trying to develop an effective, a different effectiveness, that doesn't necessarily always equate. So what I'm trying to do, as far as player development goes, is get as much vertical separation as possible and be able to develop a changeup that I can tunnel from, whether it be up or down. It doesn't always have to be both, right? Ideally, it'd be both. I mean, ideally, you'd have a rise ball that rose 10 inches, a drop ball that dropped 12 inches, and a changeup that I could tunnel with both of them. But that's just not typically the pattern that we get. So we're trying to get as much vertical separation as possible. We're trying to get, you know, and use our spin direction as our kind of test, but also understanding that if you have a drop ball that drops 10 inches, you can have a rise ball that only rises 3 inches, but you can throw it hard, you know, with what we would call more of a gyro type spin, somewhere between 30 and 40 uh, degrees on the spin direction, or in the spin efficiency. Um, and rather than looking at it like I've got to get straight backwards spin, you know, usually typically if we can get a spin efficiency of 60% on a rise ball, that's pretty good. But on a drop ball, we need 90 plus on that. And then you're going to start seeing the differences. Spin rate is something that we've learned to train. It's typically not trained through Rapsodo, but it is measured through Rapsodo. So we can kind of always get an idea of, okay, is our training, are the things that we're doing to develop spin rate actually working? And then, you know, as we get that separation, it's like, okay, now once I've developed a little bit more, maybe I get 8 to 10 inches of vertical separation between my rise and drop, or whatever. You know, it can be a curve and drop curve. It can be a fastball. It doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as it's dropping, and as long as it's rising, it's rising. And if you can get enough vertical separation between those two, that'd be great. If you can get it above 65 miles an hour, that's even better. And as you know, as you're moving forward, trying to balance the three of those, the spin efficiency, the total spin, and the velocity, to try and create the most effective pitcher you can, then that's what we try to do. And it's for, I know some people want to get, you know, and use their entire pitching staff. I prefer to train that in all of our pitchers, with the hopes that our development allows each different hitter type. When we start talking about, okay, if you've got a kid that's swinging, you know, with more of a vertical approach angle, to be able to get it above their bat, and then get it below the bat of the kid that's swinging to the floor, right? Those are the things you hope for in your training. So to me, that's really what we're using a lot of it for. Overall spin rate, the more you have, the better, typically. But if you don't put it in the right direction, then it's not really going to matter. So as you're focused on pitch design and whatnot, spin efficiency tends to be, you know, what we look at. But honestly, looking at Rapsodo's algorithm for vertical and horizontal break is really the key. If you get plus more on your rise and minus more on your drop, that's really what we're after.
Yeah, and I think too, Josh, what you're talking about is that movement matrix that Rapsodo provides, that you kind of touched in your own report that you show, but it's also included in Rapsodo reports when you download, that has that overall movement matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good place to go and see kind of that overall spread that you're talking about, how big can that get almost in that window, as far as the movement matrix and the up and down break and the side to side. So it is 11:45. So again, keep it open if you have any questions. I'm going to touch on these really quick. I'm going to go over to you, JT, first, maybe on this one, because you did talk about video and cutting video. We had a question that comes in. Is there a platform that you recommend for cutting video files for novices?
Really, the phones work just fine. I can't tell. I mean, the Rapsodo, don't get me wrong, when we're measuring, we have it out, it works, and you can look back at it. It works great. But there's a lot of times that I just need to do it like right then and there. And I might have some other things that I'm looking at, but I might just have my phone and get it right on my phone. And then just when they get done with their at bat, I can just show them right there with my phone. So the advancement of video on just our devices, on our phones, iPads and whatnot, has been like crazy. So I would say just start with that first. I wouldn't recommend one business over the other, because they kind of do the other beside. But what I do like about the Rapsodo is you can tie in with the advanced cameras and inside camera and everything we're talking about, tie in and then look at the metrics on it. So that way you're not guessing as to what someone might have done or not done.
Yeah, JT mentioned our units do record the data from the iPad. So when you're connected to the unit, there is a video recording function straight from the iPad, and it gives that data to the side. Josh spoke about the Insight camera as well. That does the same thing. That is a product that also records data, and then it gives that overlay onto the video. So you're able to see kind of the results and the slow motion, and it cuts and trims that and pairs that with everything and lives all in that Rapsodo cloud. As far as that goes, the other question was just for Rapsodo specifically of our Pro 3.0 product. So as I mentioned, Josh and JT both use our 2.0 products, the pitching and hitting. We do have a Pro 3.0 product, but that is a baseball only product. It does both. The reasoning that product is a baseball level product only is it does sit 18 feet out there between the pitcher and home plate. So very close quarters for like a live on live type of scrimmage. And that way, as they both mentioned, they do that with the 2.0 products that sit a little bit closer to home plate. So it doesn't really take up that big area right between the pitcher and the hitter as well. So there was no plans for that Pro 3.0 product in the future for softball, but we're always looking to improve the 2.0s and make sure that they are serving the softball community exceptionally well. On that end, I'm going to kind of close it up with both Josh and JT. Josh, can you just kind of give a closing statement about, the importance of data in softball and where it's continuing to grow? And if anybody in here kind of had any questions or fears, what you would say to a coach that kind of came up to you that maybe was hesitant about really digging into data and how they can get started?
Yeah, I think my approach to data as far as softball goes, a lot of times we're in, kind of a new territory. And I think that one of the most important parts is if you can collect data, and you can collect a lot of data, it might be a bit overwhelming at times. And it might be where you get so much that you're just not sure exactly what direction to go in or whatnot. I think the most important part is if you have data, you can use it, right? Collecting the data is so important, even if you don't know if it's an actionable item yet or not. And I think as we kind of move into it, I think it's imperative. It's on the pitching level because if you look more at every single Women's College World Series, more runs are scored. Less and less are the pitchers dominating like in the past. And I think that the only way out of that hole really is to start understanding what makes a pitcher effective and how to utilize that and leverage it over all of our pitchers, not just one or two, but getting all of our pitchers to move the ball better, to get better, really. So I would say, number one, if you got it collected, do the best you can to collect whatever you can. And then try things out. Try and fail. I mean, as we ask all of our players to try and fail all the time, but as coaches, sometimes we want to sit in our comfort zone. Try and fail. Try and fail, figure it out, try and fail, figure it out. And keep working, and I'm always available. If anybody wants to ask specific questions about, how we're doing certain things, don't be afraid to email me or DM or whatever to hit me up.
Yeah, JT, same thing to you, kind of closing up. Just as Josh mentioned, the game is still growing crazy, and data is a huge part of that. So what would you say to anybody that kind of maybe had questions or hesitations about moving forward with data technology in softball?
Yeah, I think what data does is it paints a better picture of what people can do. And I think what we've done is we've taken all we've had available to us was batting average and slugging and OPS. And we're supposed to look at a piece of paper that has all these averages and slugging and OPS and then determine who's good from those. And don't get me wrong, like that can paint a picture, but then you're leaving out a whole section of people that can do some really amazing things. And so I know for us, a quick story. We had a girl a long time ago. She was on our team, and she her exit speeds on pitches that were 59 and below were the highest on the team. 75, 76, she was hitting absolute missiles. 60 and above was like lowest on the team. So we had a line for her, and it instead of saying, well, you know what, you can't hit, we said, all right, anytime that there's a pitcher that's throwing 59 or below, you're in. And she ended up hitting 5 homers, over 300 in a very limited role, but it allows your players to believe in what they're doing, instead of just saying, you know what, your average is under 300, you're not very good. It's, hey, you can do these things, let's put you in a position to where you're going to have a lot of success. And for us, it's really opened up our entire lineup to knowing like what everyone can do, and they know what they can do. So when they step in, they know like, hey, we have an advantage. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But I feel like what data does is it paints a better picture on what players can do, and not just what we think that they can do.
Yeah, that's great. Josh, I'm going to throw it back to you real quick on that, because JT brought up a really, really good point on that, as far as just confidence in using roles and matchups. And we talked a lot about it on the training side, but how does this help in your game day preparation too, knowing that on the pitching side when you're going up against certain teams?
Yeah, obviously we're trying to pair our pitchers with their best matchup. And, you know, if JT would just share all his hitting data with me, it would make it a lot easier when we play them. But the reality is that you're really trying to, I mean, when you go through the scouting process, you're really trying to identify players who you know certain pitchers are going to work best at. And a lot of times that's just knowing your pitching staff and just understanding, okay, this girl is really good against lefties and slappers, right? She's a right-handed pitcher, but she's really good against those players. So now we face a lineup that's all left-handed or has a bunch of slappers. She's the girl. And if you can constantly put your pitchers in a situation where they're going to be more successful, then as a group, you start to get a lot better. I think that's the one thing that people miss is like, oh, you got to throw your 1 and 2. Well, what if your 1 and 2 are both rise ball pitchers, and you have a drop baller sitting over there that could be really effective against a team that wants to hit everything down? Well, you know, that's important. And I think that, you know, as you figure out kind of what your profiles are for your pitchers, is understanding, can I put them in a better situation each time they're out? Right? Maybe I know that Oklahoma can't hit anything under 60 miles an hour, and I throw that thumber out there. Every single travel coach I talk to has that story where they threw their left fielder and they dominated this one team. And it's like, that can happen. It probably won't happen for the second game, but it might happen the first game. And if you can manage to figure that out, then that's great. I also think that, you know, and this is my crazy mind working sometimes, but the usefulness of the reentry and being able to put, you know, certain pitchers against certain parts of every lineup can be invaluable in understanding, like, okay, this girl dominates lefties. They have 3 lefties in a row, and that's it. Well, why doesn't that kid throw against that part of the lineup twice? You know, and maybe the rest of the lineup isn't suited. Obviously, we're trying to train every pitcher so that they can beat every type of hitter. But what if one pitcher is just so much better against right-handed batters than everybody else? Well, they're probably going to be better against a right-handed hitting lineup. So those are the kind of things that we have to think about. And I think that, you know, adjusting, and every pitcher wants more innings if they can get them. And so that's where the development part comes from. But if you can understand what your pitchers can do and what they can't do and put them in a better situation because of it, then that's just gold.
Yeah, that's great. Again, I want to thank both of you for your time. I think you guys really summarize kind of data use, how it can work in player development, how it works in accountability, how it works now in opening up matchups, and really at the end of the day, setting up the player for overall success in situations that they can be successful in, and knowing that they can be successful. And I think that's where data has really come into play on those two forefronts of having factual things that they can have confidence in themselves and their abilities in these situations and really start to achieve better. We're wrapping up for the day. What I want to say is, if you do not have a Rapsodo product and you are interested, please reach out to our sales department. at Rapsodo. If you are a Rapsodo user, want more information, we have a learning center. We also have a certification course that Josh is featured on. We have a pitching and hitting one that offers a lot of information as well on these data points. If you reach out to support and you have an active team membership, that's included in that membership. And you can really dig into more data numbers and how to use this on that coaching side. So for me, that's all we have on the Rapsodo side. So I'm going to turn it back over to the NFCA committee here.
You bet. Thank you, Kristen, Josh, JT, everybody for joining. A few questions in the chat on availability. As a reminder, this will be in your coach's box. I don't have any edits on my end, so we'll get it in there pretty quick. Don't you worry, it will be there in the next few days. Just go to nfca.org, log in, coach's box, then click webinars, and it will be the first one at the very top. I know both of these guys are more than happy to answer your questions, so don't be afraid to shoot them an email. Their emails are probably on their website or in the member directory, and you can get that information you are looking for. But thank you for sharing. That's what makes our sport so awesome. Appreciate you taking the time, and we will be back with more education soon. And don't forget, convention is just around the corner. We hope to see all of you in Louisville this December. Check out the website for more information on that. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.